make sure you guys got a better view. Well, welcome everybody. I know it's raining out there and kind of a bad day for in-person class, but wanted to at least do my normal spiel on self-care, letting it be known that how important self-care is, and also kind of get introduced to group dynamics with PowerPoint we made at the University of Cincinnati for groups several years ago. So I know you have Toastland PowerPoints, but these are the current PowerPoints. I'm going to go ahead and wait.
Hello class, and welcome to our lecture on group dynamics and group leadership as part of our group skills and substance abuse counseling course. As we look at the objectives for the week, I want to remind you to review the other materials for the week prior to viewing this lecture, as it is intended to supplement your reading. By the end of the week, you should be able to identify issues that influence group dynamics, including planning, structure, member roles, and activities, and identify and describe leadership styles and the personal qualities of group leadership. First, we will discuss group dynamics. In the gliding text, our author reminds us that in any group, it is a mistake to ever conclude that nothing is happening within or between the members. Even when you cannot see them, group dynamics are at play. A social influence emerges in the group that manifests itself by altering actions, attitudes, and feelings. This is reflected in the quotation you read on this title page, reminding us that groups are dynamic entities that have a direct and indirect impact on their members. As we consider group dynamics, we need to keep in mind some basic principles which tell us that, as a general rule, primary affiliation groups, those with which people most identify, such as family or peers, exert greater pressure on individuals than secondary affiliation groups, those with which people least identify, such as a city or confederation. Let's take a second as I ask you to apply this to your own life. What would be examples of your own primary and secondary affiliations? Who are the members of these groups? Keep in mind that primary affiliation groups are those with which you most identify, like family, and secondary affiliation groups are those with which you least identify, such as the city or confederation. Now think about the roles you play in your primary groups. How does your behavior differ in these circumstances compared to when you're in a secondary group, like when you're riding a bus or a train? The influence on group members is known as group dynamics. Kurt Lewin described group dynamics as everything that goes on in a small group, including purpose, communication patterns, power, control issues, and member roles. By understanding these forces, group specialists are able to understand the nature of groups and how interactions among members affect groups' development. The forces within a group, which we call group dynamics, are made up of two elements: group content and group process. We can understand group dynamics by understanding each of these elements and the extent to which they exist within a group. Group content refers to the actual words, ideas, and information that is exchanged within a group, as well as the purpose of the group. This kind of information is necessary but deficient for a group to operate. Although members need a certain amount of information in order to achieve their goals, too much information can be overwhelming. Additionally, people in groups, like people individually, tend to not make their most important decisions based on cognitive knowledge alone. Rather, decision-making involves interaction with others in pursuit of a purpose, where individuals have a chance to understand their options, assess their feelings and thoughts in the presence of others whom they trust and value. When we consider through often a context for individuals looking to affect change in their life, we can begin to understand where group content may not be enough. This is where group process comes in. Group process is the interaction of group members with one another. As groups develop, less time is spent on content material and more time is spent on process functions. You can see here 7 types of group process: contagion, conflict, anxiety, consensual validation, mutuality, family reenactment, and installation of hope. Each of these are described in your text and will be helpful to refer back to as you prepare for your first quiz. Group processes enable members to connect and build trust and safety, both of which are necessary for optimal group conditions.
All right, so this is one of my 12-hour days, so excuse me if I read a little bit in between those. We went straight from the union to this. But getting groups started is helpful to understand kind of the pieces we do as social workers. I've done work at Claremont Recovery Center and we have the Family Addictions Group. Essentially like the Al-Anon meetings, and that's why that's one of the options for your first assignments. The observation of a group. Due Tuesday, so make sure to do one of those this weekend and do the way. Also understanding, the 7 types of group process and consent, what you do as a social worker with all your intake paperwork. At first, groups have the additional consent form that a client agrees to be part of.
Keeping in mind that by understanding group dynamics, leaders can better understand the nature of groups and how interactions among members affect the group's development. We see here how leaders can use questions to guide the interplay between content and process. Content questions may include, what do we have to do? And what do we need to accomplish our goals? While more process-driven questions would include, who am I with you, and who are we together? You'll notice that the content questions drive members to respond with information, and the process questions encourage connection. Process must be balanced with content, regardless of the type of group being conducted. Ideally, the content and process questions remain balanced throughout the session, but leaders prompting group members to attend to both and process, rather than focusing on one and then the other at varying times. Keeping both content and process in play helps group members connect the activities and discussion to the deeper work at hand. Leaders can influence group dynamics through pre-planning, structure, exercises and activities, group interaction, and members' roles. Pre-planning includes the time spent during the pre-group stage when the leaders plan for the type, duration, selection and screening criteria, and evaluation strategies. Taking time to consider these aspects of the group is essential in facilitating a successful group. Pre-planning requires clarity of purpose, establishing a group setting, and deciding the timing for group sessions. Each of these components, as well as the size of the group, can have significant impacts on the success of the group. For example, groups that include too many members are likely to experience subgrouping, which can result in some members dominating the group while others remain silent. Group structure is an aspect of group dynamics that refers both to the physical setup of the group and the interaction of groups in relation to the group as a whole. The physical structure may include the seating arrangement, and your book provides a few examples and descriptions of some possibilities. Group exercises and activities can help bring members together by facilitating interaction between members and can be used at any time in the group process while keeping in mind that the intensity of the activity or the extent to which it requires self-disclosure should match where the group is in its overall life. Additionally, overloading the group with activities can detract the purpose of the group, and this should also be a consideration in how exercises and activities influence group dynamics. Group interaction describes the verbal and nonverbal behaviors and attitudes that go along with all of the ways members relate to one another. How can leaders influence these group dynamics? It begins with first simply observing and noting how group members speak and to whom, which also includes noticing silence. These observations can then be used as guiding information as the leader facilitates discussion, addresses the group in here and now, and prompts member interactions. Member roles describe the situational identity that members take on in the context of a group. These roles may be based on the member's own expectations for themselves or others and strongly influence member behavior. One potential pitfall of roles is when members fall into dysfunctional ways of relating, perhaps chosen in an attempt to adapt to their environment. The book specifically notes how adult children of Alex may take on the role of hero, scapegoat, or mascot, which often detract from their growth in the group context. You may be able to think of a group that you've been a part of, and perhaps may even be able to think of a role you played in that group. Member roles are most often different than their identity outside of the group context, and group leaders can again observe member behavior to better understand the roles that members have taken on within the group and how those roles contribute to the nature of the group and the group's development. Variables like member commitment, readiness, and the feeling of belonging, acceptance, and security are often understood as positive group variables and promote cooperation within the group. Through his research in group work, Irving Allen has found 11 therapeutic factors at work in successful groups, and these are often known as curative factors. Each is outlined in the next two slides and in your textbook on pages 46 and 47. You can find these on page 46 and 47 of your book in more detail. But the curative factors include installation of hope, universality, imparting information, altruism, the corrective experience, the development of socializing techniques, as well as imitative behavior, interpersonal learning, group cohesiveness, catharsis, and existential factors. In addition to these positive group variables, negative group variables also operate in groups and can include avoiding conflict, abdicating group responsibilities, and becoming narcissistic. Learning about the various dynamics at play in group work can help leaders better understand the nature of groups and how interactions among members affect the group's development. Group dynamics influence how members feel, behave, and react in the group context, and greatly influence the overall success of the group. Leaders may observe group dynamics in multiple ways, which may include videotaping sessions with client permission, or journaling as a reflective exercise after sessions. Leaders can also take advantage of the pre-group stage with pre-planning as one way to promote positive group variables and general group success. And all group leaders would be wise to realize that group dynamics play a powerful role in how groups operate.
So, depending on which group you are leading in your social work practice, as mentioned here, the group dynamics can definitely change things up. So at Claremont Recovery Center, when we did everything with the families and doing different things that were addiction recovery related, it can be a challenge. Sometimes you have a mom who's pissed off that her son won't stop using or is still stuck on probation, is clean for a long time, different things of that nature. So those are some of the things to keep in mind from the family dynamics. In the next couple of weeks, we are going to get into some of the self-care and some of the other processes that go on from the Tosland book. One in specific about leadership, and then in week 4, it's more legal, ethical, and multicultural issues. So for your assignment Tuesday, the most important is going to be really where you are observing and filling out everything in the syllabus. So I'll go back and open up the syllabus, but observing the online meeting can find at aa.org. You can also observe a mental health group if you work at an agency, or you can go ahead and do any of the Al-Anon family groups or anything in relation to that. Ideally we get into a mental health agency, but because of COVID, that's been a little bit hard to do, unless if you are currently in your practicum. So also remember to check in terms of attendance, because that will be important for everything. You have to report for attendances tomorrow, so be sure to complete an assignment so you have that verification of your attendance. So here's the very last few pages of the syllabus. This is the group assessment project. And it kind of shows you the instructions on it. So you would name the group, usually AAB, open, make sure to go to an open AA meeting. Open to the public. If it's a closed meeting, it's closed to the public. So it says here, social work practice with groups requires knowledge and skills specific to the group modality. The group worker should be knowledgeable of group dynamics and have capacity to assess the group as a whole. This will permit the worker to assess individual member behavior within the group context. Intervene effectively on behalf of individuals within the group and intervene effectively on the group as a whole. If it's a family group, also on the family's part. So this assignment due Tuesday, get it done tonight or before the weekend, so you don't have to worry about it. There's meetings 24 hours a day on aa.org. This assignment will provide you an opportunity to apply the knowledge you obtained from class discussion and the textbook about the subject of group dynamics to the actual process of assessing a social work group. The assignment will also expose you to a social work group within the social work service community and permit you to observe how the leader of the social work group functions or in the actual group session. And then finally, the assignment allows you to practice this type of writing that is used in record keeping and social work practice. So here's your instructions. Identify the group. We mentioned Al-Anon or AA.org. There's online meetings that are open. Contact the leader in advance, which you don't have to do if it's an open AA meeting, but it wouldn't hurt to announce or let them know in the chat that you're observing the open AA meeting. They can give you more information too, which might give you all the stuff you need for your paper. Attend a single session, prepare a report, and then present a report to class. So here's the paper where it has the name, the primary purpose of the group, if it is AA addiction recovery, the name and credentials, characteristics of the leader. It may just be the chairperson of the setting, so like agency building, appearance of the setting, room size, accommodation and arrangements. Do you think they helped contribute? Composition, what effects the composition have, why. Communication patterns, observe group attraction, level of cohesion, observe normative behavior, the normative ideas, and content relevancy. Task maintenance, also describe how the leader managed intergroup development, what you think the estimated stage of the group were in. That's from the book, so you can cite the book there, and then the group culture observed or other observations. So you guys should have a good amount of time to finish this. You turn it in on D2L. It being a hybrid class, we can do a lot more electronically, but do make sure to sign in with attendance. I was going to do more of the self-care. This is a PowerPoint on self-care. I know some of you have had it before. We're just making sure you're honoring that self-care. As for right now, some of us honor it by, making sure we get the assignments done on time and we'll go over this next week when there's more to hear. I know we're kind of pushing 30 minutes in, and I like to keep it at that, so you have the rest of the time to do your observation of group tonight. That's the idea for the remainder of the class. So for the last hour and a half, observing the group and writing up the paper, so you guys can control that. If you have questions, definitely email me. I will be available electronically, and hopefully you're all well. I hope we aren't having any COVID outbreak or anything of that nature, so let me know, and I will see you guys Thursday.